Hello, now welcome Long Scope. Thank you through Long Stop One Time Mipla, Long this the program. Governor Blong East Sipik Province, Allan Bird, talk long all heavy all people, been bungim long time belong COVID-19 state of emergency inside long country, now long province belong Long East Sipik. And we been talk to long how Yumi can halivim all people, lot time behind, suppose this pela kind all sick, bungim Yumi again. Governor Bird talk more, too long all police, long no can bagarapim all people, lot time belong SOE.
Good evening to the viewers. I think you got to take a strategic approach to any problem that you come across, especially in our job. And, this COVID-19 pandemic, obviously it's affecting the entire world, but it's not just affecting the world medically. It's affecting the world socially, it's affecting the world economically as well. And I think if you hear the current debates and if you're reading, economic growth this year could be as bad as minus 9%. So what is minus 9%? How does that translate into, to everyday people? Well, America currently has about 30 million people unemployed as a result of COVID. That's almost 4 times our population. People are out of work now. So that's very serious. Beyond just people getting sick and dying, there's this very serious issue. Many countries that export rice to us, for instance, well, their governments have taken a decision because of this economic and food security issues around COVID to stop exporting rice. So what does that mean for PNG? Well, it means we could be potentially running out of rice. Yeah. So the reason why I've been talking about this SOE is that I get afraid when we're only listening to medical people about COVID. And particularly in our case in Papua New Guinea, where no one has died. Everyone who got sick basically recovered without, I think one person had to be hospitalized. Everyone else was fine. There was one person who got hospitalized in an Asian country, I think. He was working in a mine. But in country, only one person went to the hospital. Everyone else recovered. So I think that information about how our sick people are responding to the virus needs to feed into our decision-making process. And, since my first day into Parliament, in 2017, I get the feeling that Parliament just votes the way executive government wants it to vote. If executive government says vote like this, everybody votes like that. And even now, if executive government says vote like this, everybody just votes like that. And for me, I take that mandate. The people of ECP elected me. I may be part of a government, but my first loyalty is to the people of ECP. It's their mandate I bring to Parliament. It's not my own. So I cannot be sitting in there making decisions without considering how they might feel about those decisions, for instance. So when you look at COVID, and one of the things in CIPIC is that from about 2017 up until now, and particularly since Dr. Clement Malau came on board, and we've got a very good PHA CEO as well in Mark Maludu. And so we've always had this push for healthy living. We've always been telling our people, and we go on radio regularly and say to our people that, we do we ask the PPC to do a segment on radio. I do segments on the radio. We encourage open members to do it, and of course the health people and our provincial administrator. So we've been telling CIPIC people for a while now, eat fresh food from the garden, eat fresh fruits from the garden, try to cut down on processed foods, because Dr. Malau himself is a public health expert. He's a very good one at that, and he was a former health secretary. So this whole thing about healthy living, we've been doing it as an awareness campaign with our people to encourage them to go back to eat garden foods. And I think that's worked very successfully, to the point where when you had the first 14-day shutdown, after about 3 days, I was getting calls from councillors and LLG presidents, and even mothers were sending me messages saying, Governor, Our food is rotting in the garden, What are we going to do? We need to sell this food because they were growing more than they needed. Because for the last how many years, that was their livelihood. Growing food in the garden, selling it to other people. So it became a business for them. It became a means of sustenance and livelihood. So for them to not harvest the food and sell it to someone, it would have been a great loss to them. So after about 3 or 4 days, I gave the instructions. I said, look, okay, we want social distancing, so everyone can do marketing just in front of their village or something. And if you want to buy food, you drive out. And that was the other thing. Based on the evidence that we can see from other countries, those people who are healthy, they're the ones that are strong enough to fight COVID-19. So, if we deprived our people of all these healthy foods, these healthy organic foods that are already there, then obviously we are depriving them of the ability to fight the disease. So coming from that knowledge and understanding of our own situation, I felt that we were not doing a similar thing at the national level. So I kept opposing it. And one of the fundamental things for me as a parliamentarian is that our constitution is written in such a way that it gives you and me and everyone individual inalienable rights. These rights are yours, guaranteed under the Constitution. The right to move around, the right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom from persecution and arrest and all these things. There's a whole series of rights in the Constitution. When we take out an SOE, we essentially suspend those rights. So for me, I find that difficult to just come to Parliament and people say, let's just suspend everyone's rights, and we go ahead and do it. So I'm like, hang on a minute, you may all gotta stop now scaling past them. Are we doing the right thing? And the other thing is, of course, unfortunately, and look, there are many, many good people working in the police force. But at the same time, we've got some elements within the police force who, in a situation like that, they take advantage of it. And obviously, they start to go and do all the wrong things. And the sanctioning process within the police is not functioning. So they'll do the wrong thing, and it's very difficult for them to go and get it corrected. So there's no justice for the people. And so for me, I'm very reluctant to jump to this SOE situation. I'm thinking you only jump to it if you can really justify it. And in essence, that's what the Constitution says. If the government wants, under Section 10 of the Constitution, it's very clearly spelled out. All the steps are there. Anybody can go and, you can go Google it and check the PNT Constitution, and you go down to Section 10 and you have a look there. It's very clear. It says that government must justify why it wants an SOE, and particularly an SOE in these circumstances. And so for me, I felt that the decision-making process where we should either keep an SOE or vary an SOE, or how we respond within an SOE, should be based on the situation that we can see and perceive and measure. That information should feed into the decision-making process. And I felt that that wasn't happening. And I felt that it was important to speak to that. Because if I remain silent, and if other leaders, elected representatives of the people, we all remain silent, then I felt that we may be failing in our duty to the people who elected us.
Time you may come back, Governor Bird by talk more long police violence where he walk long kama planty long country. Welcome back, Long Scope. Passing belong all police long paitimol man nothing must stop inside long country. Governor Bird he talk more, also all passing where all police he walk him long paiti man marry nothing in our street.
Yeah, I think violence is something I think should concern all of us. And not just violence against women. People react from time to time when there is this issue of violence against women. And I think every father is concerned if they have a daughter about, what sort of country is my daughter living in, if these things are going to become accepted and normal. But beyond just the domestic violence argument, there is the general violence in society issue. And this is something that is deep-rooted, it's something that's going back, and a lot of it is perpetrated by young people, you know. Like back home in Sepik, a couple of weeks back, we had some young people, they got drunk, they were having homebrew, there was a fight, and one young person got shot, and he died. Just the other day, there was an incident as well where there was a skirmish and the police shot someone dead, a young man, again. And that may be the story in ESP, but that's generally the story around the country. I just saw on Facebook a young man got bashed to death by police just a couple of days ago in Milne Bay. And so there are all these questions around violence and this culture of violence that I'm concerned about. I mean, we should be able to argue very forcefully and very passionately about whatever is affecting us, but to take that to another level and to respond with violence, physical violence which actually harms someone or kills them or maims them and puts them in hospital, I think these things need to be dealt with, and we need to deal with it as a society. Part of it is a police issue, the other part of it is a society issue. And so one of the things, last year, the ESP Provincial Assembly, we suspended the assembly because we started, our president started asking a lot of questions about law and order and violence generally. So as chairman of the assembly, I suspended the assembly and I said, look, let's go and have a meeting about this. So we called the police commander in and his police station commander and the provincial police commander. And we had the administrator and all the relevant people there. And we had a long 5-hour discussion about law and order and about violence generally in our community, in ESP. So this is not something that is just stemming from some incidents that have happened recently. These are incidents that go back a long way. I mean, I was chairman of Borum Hospital for about 5 years, 4.5 years. In that time, for instance, I noticed that more than half of the people presenting at the hospital were as a result of violence. Violence with bush knives, violence with grass knives. And in Sepik, there's something now we call a wire caterpillar, where they have a dart. It's a nail that's sharpened at one end, it has a barb, and they're able to fire it with a slingshot. And these things can penetrate and kill, you know what I mean? They can actually, it's like a bullet. So young men are now using these weapons. And slashing people is almost normal now in my province. It might be different in other places, but certainly in my province it is. So we were discussing last year, and we put some money in our budget this year to sort of go out and do a campaign across ESP about violence and then to try to get communities involved to reduce the high incidence of violence in the community. Because it's obviously having an impact on the community. It's affecting people's lives. At the same time, it's having a massive impact on our hospital and our ability to, the hospital ended up putting an extra surgeon. And that surgeon's job was just to sew people up. Now, I don't know how many patients a doctor can sew in one day, but if you end up with 18 slash patients in the hospital and you've got 2 doctors who are doing the stitching, I think that would become rather difficult because, it's not like you're fixing a car, for instance. You just put a bolt on and this is different. You got to fix up tissues and all this and that, and that's quite stressful on the hospital staff as well. So all of these sorts of issues we've been interested in Sepik for a while, and we want to deal with it. And as I said, this morning we had a very long discussion on law and order and violence in caucus. And I requested that, particularly with the police, that we need a special committee to deal with police and police violence issues, what is causing our police to just shoot and kill people or, to just go and harass people and all these things that are going on in the community. There's something happening. It's becoming a pandemic on its own, all this violence. We are losing, I think more people have died from violence or ended up in hospital for violence than COVID. What did we do about COVID? We shut the country down. We haven't shut the country down with all these people that are dying as a result of violence. So I'd like to see this violence pandemic in our community and in our society dealt with. And if us leaders are turning a blind eye to it, then I don't think that's a good thing. I think we should be looking at which issues are affecting our people, which issues are creating unnecessary anxiety, unnecessary stress within our communities. And I think you'll find that violence and fear of violence, not just within families, but from external, other people, is actually quite high on the minds of people. I mean, you talk to people in Mosby, and some people in Gerehu, for instance, they don't want to go to town or other places because they're afraid of what might happen to them. People in villages are afraid to go to town because they might be harassed and robbed and beaten in the process. So this issue of violence cannot be understated. We cannot say we don't have a violence problem. We do, and we need to deal with it. Are we doing the right thing? Okay, we are here trying to deal with a virus that is affecting people, obviously, and is killing people in other countries. But in trying to tackle this virus, right, are we then creating much bigger problems?
Behind long this pela stot pela malolo, passing belong walk didiman inside long province by halivim lo kirapim good pela sit down long behind time. Welcome back, Long Scope. Passing long walk didiman inside long 1 happy long yumi, by halivim yumi long good pela sit down long behind time. Governor belong ESP Province, who side one pela didiman too. He walk talk strong long yumi mas strong in walk didiman. Governor by talk too law passing belong school inside long province belong em.
Me, agriculture has always been an important tool. Right. I've been in the agriculture space for a long time. I'm not a trained agriculturalist, I'm self-taught, but I have seen agriculture transform entire communities, yeah? So for me, I see agriculture as a tool. If you want to develop people, use agriculture. If you want people to be able to educate their children, use agriculture. If you want women to have gender equality, use agriculture. If you want people to have access to whatever it is, disposable income, you want them to have a permanent house, use agriculture. And so in ESP, since I got elected, I've been really focused around, given my own, I've spent maybe 25, almost 30 years in the agriculture space. So I know it a little bit better than most people. And so for me, it's a natural fit for what I want to achieve in my province. So we've been really engaging in that sector, and for us, particularly around cocoa. Why cocoa? Cocoa, the world market for cocoa is probably around 600 billion kina a year. What's our budget in Papua New Guinea every year? It's like 18 billion this year, okay? Just one crop is worth 600 billion kina. That's cocoa, right? So you can just do the numbers. At the moment, Papua New Guinea does not even produce 1% of the world's cocoa. We're not even at 1%. So I'm saying to myself, do I have enough people? Yeah, we've got a population of close to 600,000 people in ECB. So we're not short of workers. Do we have land? Yes, we do. We've got 4.4 million hectares of land. So we're the second largest province in terms of land size. So we have land, we have people. We just need to direct them to do something. So for me, agriculture is a very easy thing to do. We picked cocoa. Why cocoa? We're already doing very well in vanilla. So our ability to grow vanilla is quite small. I think ECP is doing like 15% of the world's vanilla right now. So we're a major player. To grow beyond that is going to be difficult because we're going to be fighting Madagascar. Madagascar has been doing vanilla for 250 years. We've only been doing it for 20 years. So obviously for me, strategically, it doesn't make sense. It's almost a fully developed market. So that then leaves cocoa. We've been doing cocoa for over 100 years, but we haven't really been doing it well. So I wanted to really take it and go to another level. The first thing I realized was that we don't have the planting materials, right? And if we did have the planting materials, they were quite expensive. So that's where we got involved. to try to increase the amount of planting material available. Once you have a lot of planting materials, it becomes cheap, supply and demand. It becomes cheap, and then you just get it out to people. And it's working really well. It took us just over 2 years to develop our seedling capacity, if you like. We call them budwood. We needed the budwood gardens. So from the budwood, we can then produce the cocoa seedlings that we could go and plant. So right now, we started off with a seedling capacity in ECP of about 30,000 a year. It's taken us 2 years to go up to a 2 million seedling capacity. So ECP has a 2 million seedling capacity. Now you have to remember, ECP is the largest grower of cocoa, but when you compare it to the other provinces, it's not by much, okay? So I want to expand that. I want more production, more money going to the people in the villages. So we increase the number of seedlings. Next year, so this year we're going to try and get 2 million seedlings to the farmers. If someone comes and asks me for money, if I don't swear them, I tell them, go away, don't ask me for money. But if you ask me for seedlings, I will give you cocoa seedlings, yeah? I will get the provincial government to buy the seedlings and give it to you. How we make the seedlings, we do it and we give it to you. You make your own money. You look after yourself, you look after your wife and kids, build your permanent house, but we will help you with the seeds. So the ECP provincial government has a seedling policy, a seed-giving policy. And this stems from our integrated agriculture development plan. Obviously, we want to do all the big things. But if you want to do all the big things, you need big money. We don't have big money. So just to give you an example, how much we've spent on this cocoa program so far, we've spent just over $1 million kina. But in terms of the impact is going to be massive. So this year, we're going to spend another 500,000-600,000 kina. And for that, we're going to try and put 2 million cocoa seedlings into the ground. Next year, we're going to increase the funding. Obviously, we've got the European Union program that's coming in, which is going to complement what we are doing. Yeah. Next year, I want to get even more ambitious. I want to try and plant 10 million cocoa seedlings next year. Do I have the people? Yes, I do. Do I have the land? Yes, I do. So again, this is just about empowering people. Members of parliament, people see us as like ATM. You run around 500 kina, 1,000, and the same person comes 2 weeks later and asks you for 500 kina. It's a no-sum game. You're always losing. But if you give the people 500 seeds, he can feed himself for the next 30 years. He can look after his family for the next 30 years. So that's essentially, you ask me how important agriculture is. I think in the absence of something else, you don't have anything else. You've got agriculture. So that's the reason we're using it, because it's all we've got. And it's not half bad, I think you can make a decent living from agriculture. And like for us, we're not just doing the agriculture stuff. We're also interested in the labor scheme in Australia for agriculture, for picking fruits. Why are we interested in that? Because I want to send some of my people down to Australia, not just to make money and sort of run around in Australia, but I want them to see how Australians farm. So when they come back, they're going to have a very different idea of what farming is all about. And hopefully that will bring our farming to a different level. So that's why we're doing it. Really trying to do something with the youth. And as I said, this agriculture program is actually geared towards youth. It's not something for old people. This is something for young people. So this is a youth-oriented program. You've got to be young and strong and willing to work to be able to take part in this. But coming back to the issue of education and youth, I think in future, and other countries have already done it, with COVID-19, people are moving towards learning using the internet. So if you look at a place like Papua New Guinea, even without COVID, ECP has about 800 schools. Most of our schools are in remote places. We have difficulty getting teachers there. We have difficulty getting books there. So I'm hoping that if we can develop a data backbone, that we can roll out education on it, then even if the teacher is not there, the students can still learn. There's one thing that I've learned, and that is this. Children are very, very smart. If you start them off properly, you'll find that young people understand computers and mobile phones and all these things much, much faster. They can adopt that technology much, much faster than us old people. So obviously, the ability to learn is already there with the young people. So let's not underestimate that. I think the limits as to how young people can learn, those limits are placed on them by us because we think there's only one way. Whereas young people can be quite creative. They'll figure out a way to learn as long as they have the resources available. So, as I said, in ECPIC, we've always had difficulty delivering education. And so, if we continue doing it the same way we've been doing, all our kids will be at a disadvantage. We've got to change. And that change has to involve technology. Technology is the only thing that will allow us to make the leap. Technology like solar panels and solar power. Technology like data transmission, whether it be using a satellite dish or some other medium. Technology in the shape of maybe like a media pad or a reader, so that, if the teacher is not there, the students should be able to switch on a tablet or some device and be able to access learning material.
Na emtasol all story belong yumi long this pela episode long scope. Thank you to much long stop one time mipla. Na bringing you again long Sunday long week behind. Time mipla bringing you long narapela episode long scope. Good night.